Sean Haney here with RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio, and I'm joined right now by the president of Canada Beef. It is Michael Young. Michael, how's it going today?
I'm fine. John, how are you today?
I'm doing good. There's lots to chat about. This is a tough time for the livestock sector on the farm, through the food value chain, for sure, as we've seen a lot of difficulty for our packers in Canada to be able to stay open or working at some sort of a second shift. It's very, very challenging. Michael, how would you describe the situation here right now domestically? We heard yesterday the CEO of Tyson talk about how the food chain is broken. Of course, he was looking at that from a bit of an American perspective. What did you think about his comments?
Well, I think for their situation, it's fairly accurate. We're obviously plant closures and slowdowns are a challenge for both countries. I think it can be said that both countries and both delivery systems, both food chains are working hard to keep the shelves filled. But essentially it's a question of health and safety of employees and versus food supply. So unfortunately, we're going to need to go through this thing and see it through.
So we've heard, was it 2 weeks ago now, the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, Marie-Claude Bebeau, said that Canadians don't need to be worried about food shortages. What do you think about this? Do Canadians need to be concerned about a shortage of beef on the shelf at the grocery store?
Well, Sean, I can only comment again on what I know today, and what I know today is that supply is going to be down for a while. Prices are likely going to go up, and the demand is really high. All of the information that I think consumers are hearing is definitely fueling stock up tendencies and trends, and this is adding to the problem. Part of it is there is Canadian beef available and it is moving. There are certain items that are selling out. Out of stocks are common in most stores. Some have put limits on it so that people can get what they're looking for. So what I know today, I think as long as things happen the way we think they're gonna, I think we're gonna be okay. We've got one plant shut down now. Hopefully, it's going to open once it gets back through its 14 days, and then it'll get back to one shift. We've got another plant in southern Alberta that's running, I think, about 40 to 45% capacity. It's doing all it can. I do know that both of the larger plants now are not exporting the volumes that they were before. So a large part of that of that inventory is staying in Canada to look after Canadians. And so I think as long as we don't see any more dramatic shutdowns or hopefully we can manage the slowdowns, I think we're going to be okay.
Well, we heard the Prime Minister say last week in one of his morning press conferences that beef does need to stay home. And, he had alluded to the situation you just talked about. From your perspective, Canada Beef works so hard on trying to make sure that we're developing markets internationally. Are you concerned that we're going to maybe potentially push some customers elsewhere if we keep all the beef home?
Well, I think I am concerned, but you do need to look after your most important market, and the domestic marketplace is by far Canada's most important market. So, our processing partners are going to look after that market first. It's also, I think it's more accurate not to look at the export market as an either or proposition either, Sean, in that a lot of the items that go into exports are really items that are not fully utilized in Canada or in the USA. So the export market, for the most part, is a complementary outlet for the processing of the entire animal. So where I see it is, where the cuts, the primal cuts and the trimmings that are needed for Canadians, I believe are going to stay in Canada for Canadians. And I think the items that were typically exported that have no market, will still continue to flow into the export marketplace. We've sent assurances to our export partners long in advance of this, letting them know what measures that the Canadian industry is taking. And I think all things considered, I mean, these are importing countries that import from many suppliers, and all of those suppliers are going through similar challenges right now. So I believe that, we've got good relationships in the export marketplace. I think that once we get through the other side, we'll be able to rebuild those relationships based on, as the industry comes through and things start to come together again. Yeah. So yes, to answer to your question is, I'm very concerned, but I also know that the Canadian industry is by far the most important market.
I don't think a lot of Canadians are showing up at some of our big food retailers and saying, "Where's the cow tongue?" What's going on here? I need my cow tongue.
Yeah. Another thing, Sean, one of the things that, I like to point out to folks is, the U.S. is our largest export market, but the majority of the volume was going to the U.S. is really leaner muscle cuts and trimmings for grinding operations. And I do know that, that material now, excuse me, is staying in Canada to help support the demand for ground beef, which, it's through the roof across. We're seeing 40 to 50% increases in demand for some of these items. So, yeah, it's quite a situation.
Going back to early February, everything from a protein standpoint, this looked like it could be a banner year for export opportunities. We were coming off of ASF in China. There was a lot of reasons to be optimistic. And of course, COVID-19 has really derailed a lot of that opportunity. Now, we're getting closer where it feels to, some of these export partners where they're getting past it. They're reopening their economy, China being a good example of that. What are you hearing from a lot of your customers in some of these Asia regions? Because last year we had a great year in Japan last year too, as another example, through our TPP agreement. Yeah. What are some of those clients saying? Are they eager to get back to business post COVID-19, and do they see the demand for beef coming out of Canada?
Yes, they are. I mean, they're each in their sort of particular market situations, but African swine fever has not gone away. The demand gap that was created in China affects all animal protein consuming countries around the world in one way or the other. So that has not gone away. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we were going into what was shaping up to be an amazing year for Canadian beef exports. Well, Canadian meat exports really across the board was lining up quite nicely. And we're coming off a record year. Our export growths have been growing exponentially year over year over year, and we're seeing some great market indicators for future growth. So what we are hearing is, of course, these countries still are looking for imported meat. It's too soon to know exactly what the impact is because we don't have the March numbers yet. They will be available fairly soon, within a month, I hope. And we'll see what the actual percentage decreases are. But I do know that exports are significantly down across the board in all markets. So again, we're communicating with our export partners weekly. We reach out to them and ask them how it's going, what areas, what are your concerns. It's more, though, about, of course, they would like the meat if it's available. That's a given. But it's also about providing them with accurate information as to because what they're hearing in media is often what's different in what is actually happening. So having that relationship and taking the time to interpret what is going on in Canada based on what they may be reading about or what's perhaps been lost in translation is really important. So we're taking a lot of time to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. One of the other concerns I'm hearing is the cost of freight, the shortage of containers, refrigeration concerns. What are you seeing in that regard? It's one thing to have the demand, it's one thing to have the supply, but we got to be able to get it there. Containers are an issue.
It seems the entire distribution system is in disarray. It's almost like every time we come up with a solution, there's another problem. So I think the system is going to have to work itself out. In the beginning, you may recall, when COVID first hit China, we had a huge backup of containers coming into China. So China was buying protein from all over the world, and it's showing up in all ports. But but because of COVID, there was nobody there to unload the containers. So that was just the beginning of it. So they worked through that, and distribution is now up and running. But it's going to be a challenge as we move through this and as we start to rebuild our systems. And I also think, Sean, the lessons learned from this experience is definitely going to allow us to emerge with a much stronger industry. I think we've learned a lot of things that we perhaps didn't know. I mean, the phrase, you're only as strong as your weakest link could not be more real in this situation that we're going through right now.
Yeah. So we're early here, or we're midstream, at least in this whole situation. Can you give me an example of one of those learnings?
Well, for instance, robotics in the meat processing industry would be a great step forward for us. So what that's, what the pandemic has taught us is that, health and safety of employees is paramount. It's primary. It's a responsibility. Processing food for Canadians is also extremely important. So I think moving forward, the industry will take a better look at automation and robotics to move some of the human contact out of these plants that are so dependent on skilled labor working close together. So I think that's one of the key learnings from this, that as we move forward, we can look at some of these technologies. And I know we'll be supporting these initiatives moving forward.
Yep.
For that very reason.
Yes, absolutely. Michael, thank you very much for joining us today, and look forward to our next chat, and good luck sorting some of these issues out.
Well, thanks, Sean. You have a great day as well.